Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. There's a simple formula that the great mystic, or the mystic's wife, that we call Holy Mother, Sri Sharada Devi, gives. It's a kind of mathematical formula that says, if we intensify our love of God, then, or if we want a vision of God, then we have to intensify our love of God. And our love of the world decreases in a commensurate proportion. We just have to have that determination to break our bonds. But what does all this mean? When we talk of divine grace, we're talking of something that is not to get in the future. It's something that we have here and now. You have some example for that, yes? And much of what I said is repetition, because these are so important, these concepts and ideas, that we have to continuously repeat them. Sri Ramakrishna told us the wind of God's grace is continuously blowing. We have but to set our sail. And then we can also use a more modern example. Everybody uses a mobile phone. That means everybody is connected by radio. And there are various cells or small substations that make sure the signal is transferred from one part to another. And that doesn't work unless some electrical current is there, unless some kind of magnetic field is there, unless something is there to carry all the radio waves for us. And then we have multiple versions of transistors to catch the wavelength, to catch the frequency. And then we use that instrumentation and interpretation of what we catch, and it comes to us. We don't go off looking for it. We simply pick up the mobile phone and we connect. And sometimes if you're in a difficult area, maybe a high mountain or something where the signal is out of our range, then we have to find a more suitable place. But it's only that the instrumentation and the mechanisms for catching it is not adequate. You can't do away with the electromagnetic field because that is a fundamental, basic element of nature. We call it akasha. So the ancient people knew there was some centered area, some all-permitting, all-pervading area that has different kinds of waves that penetrates everywhere, and we don't have to order such a thing online. You can immediately do some tuning here. And when we do that tuning, there's a flow. We can call this a flow theory of evolution. I've mentioned this before, where there's no mystery about where it starts and when it ends. It's simply like water. It wants to flow, or air, it wants to flow, or the electrical current, it wants to flow, and we have to be in a position to catch it. See, the sun is always shining. If a person closes his window, he won't get the light. It's by a certain self-effort that is required to catch it. So grace is already there. We don't have to meditate for it. The very process of meditation, the very thought that arrives at our substation is simply the grace flowing. And we suitably, with an element of intention, enthusiasm, we can catch it. And we can sustain it for as long as we like, theoretically. We can keep the tuning going. So grace is already there. There's one way, of course, of looking at this problem of how do we block this grace off, or how do we allow it to flow? You see, the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, one of my favorite lessons within the Bhagavad Gita. It's chapter 6, and the 5th stanza tells us, Let a man raise himself by himself. Let him not lower himself, for he alone is a friend. He alone is a friend of himself, or he alone is the enemy of himself. Now that simple statement requires an expansion. A good explanation has to be given there. We have within us a certain internal instrument that is capable of catching whatever we like, catching the truth about anything. And we call this Antakarana. It's an internal instrument. That means it's not ourselves. It's something that we can use. And we can, for convenience sake, say that we can catch something that is internal or external. We can catch the truth about what? You see, there's a table in front of me. There's a computer in front of me. There may be a picture on a wall. There may be the wall itself. We require this instrument to catch all of these objects and register them. That's called external truth. But the fact that you are sitting here, the wall and there, and so on and so forth, there's a certain investigative process that's required. And this internal instrument is capable of grasping that. But there are so many other items there. Not only things on the wall, but there are also sounds and touches, and tastes, pressures. All of these things are available to us. Various other objects of perception, they're already there. And the internal apparatus is capable of receiving everything. Then if that's the case, we should get all our knowledge in one go. And we know that doesn't happen. So why don't we get it like that? Because the instrument being there, objects being there, perceiver being there, and all the factors necessary for knowledge being present, we should theoretically catch it all. But we don't. We only get one at a time. The whole thing is arranged in such a way that we get one thing per second. Otherwise, imagine all the information coming in one go. We'd be half mad. We won't get any sleep. So nature has provided us a suitable arrangement where, through the media of time, we are able to only catch one thing and then another thing and another thing. And that is to our advantage. Something like a combustion engine of a car that has a sensitive distributor finger, and instead of firing all the pistons in one go, it has an irregular sequence, 1, 3, 5, that kind of thing. And with that firing, the whole thing moves. It's a good example. So direct perception is possible only one at a time. And though all possibility is potentially there, in actual working conditions, only one at a time can be connected or contacted. So the point of attention is like a sensitive torchlight or spotlight that can be pointed in a direction, a light on an object, and give us what we require. You may know 100 songs, you can't sing them all in one go. You may read a page in a book, you can't see the whole thing. Some people may be able to speed read and read one paragraph. Some may even say one page, but still one unit. Some people read a line, some people read a word, some people read a sentence, one at a time. So whether it's picking up knowledge or expressing existing knowledge, our attention is so arranged that we only get it one per second. It can be either grasped or expressed. So all knowledge, therefore, ultimately is possible. The instrument being there, and it shuts out many things and allows many things. It acts as a kind of control. And that means the point of attention being there, we can guide it. What guides the attention? What's the urge which makes the attention move? Well, it's the urge toward completion or perfection. When we want to investigate what is a thing, we want to complete it. We want to get all the knowledge about it. And so this internal instrument, this antakarana, is necessary. Like a finger pointing. acting as a regulator, a kind of rotation, one thing at a time. This limits, of course, our capacity to grasp knowledge or to express it, but that's in our favor. Because otherwise, technically, the spirit being there, everything being in place, then we'll catch everything simultaneously. And as we say, sleep won't be possible. We'll be all disturbed. So the key is the point called attention, a kind of limb which we can project. You can say, come on, please, attend to this. We can pick up an internal ear, as it were, that is the force called attention, and we can direct it, and it receives one point at a time. The Antakarana is working through this instrument or sub-instrument called attention. So here in this passage it says, let a man raise himself by himself. Let him not lower himself. It means if you allow a negative thought to come, which makes immediate realization of the truth or knowledge possible, or impossible, I should say, then we block this grace. So we can make a definition. What is evil from this standpoint? Well, it's a way of thinking which effectively removes the possibility of getting knowledge. And the knowledge is available now. Why can't we get it now? So realization can be now. God's grace being there, we should be able to get it. We shouldn't start an argument which makes such a thing impossible by internal thinking or wrong thinking. All knowledge can come right now, right here, right now. And this tract from the Bhagavad Gita is necessary for it to highlight its presence. A person should exert himself. He should not lower himself by saying, I'm incapable of doing that, I'm a sinner, I'm weak, it's impossible. None of that will work. All of that serves to be negative. And it's barring your progress. So all scriptures are addressed, they're not addressed to God. Please do this, please do that. They're addressed to us, which says, you have a possibility of doing this or don't doing that. Some kind of regulator. It assumes that any normal person has got the capacity to shut out the tendency which is uppermost in your mind, at least for a few seconds. At least you can create another counter tendency. You can stop a certain impulse, create another one. At least for a short time, everybody can do that. May not be able to do it for 1 hour at a time, but at least scripture knows a few seconds we can do it. Now, if we get used to a few seconds, we can maybe get used to a few minutes. Because this time, this facility, this train that travels and gives us this opportunity to insert something from our own free will, from our own choice, we can use it. We can insert something because we have something like a choice, a free choice. Old friends from the past are saying, hey, you made new friends here. What about us? We've been with you since you were a child. Jealousy, hate, anger, pride, all these things that may have served us in some way. They say, hey, I see you have new friends. What about us? Well, the new friends we welcome, we give them a cup of tea. The old friends we can also welcome for a few moments. Please come. Come if you want. Stay if you can. Please go if you must. But then I really need the company of these new friends, these new values that will raise the mind up, not lower it down. So, a man with a teacher can be asked to repeat a few words. Come on, repeat a few words. With a man who believes in fatalism. It's all fate. I have no control over anything. Please repeat the days of the week. Please repeat all your relatives, names of all your relatives. Please repeat every animal you can think of from A to Z in a zoo. And then, of course, the student does it. And then, because you told me to repeat, I'm repeating it. But you're not a machine like that. So without being a machine to work only a certain way, how did you move from the machine, from the fixed routine, from your stated determinism, saying everything is fate? How did you have a military coup against it and do something different? So everybody has a free choice. And the only question left is whether we can choose a thought or an idea and put it in for an hour without a break. It's called meditation. Or even normal life where we can, in any circumstance, say, wait, let me put something new and better in and deal with all the situations that we find, like a sports person on a rugby field, saying, let me not wait for some player to attack me. Let me be proactive. Let me take charge. Let me be prepared. Let me find a way with my skill and a certain sense of art, learn it, repeat it, and through this repetition, employ it for our benefit, raise the mind up by itself. So we can take on new friends. They'll all clamor. Every friend will clamor for attention. That's all that happens. We call that disturbance of the mind. But any newcomer can get reception just for a short time. And taking advantage of that, the scripture says, don't do this, but do that. It's possible at frequent intervals when we take advantage or so to go out of the beaten track, to make a new friend, to develop a new habit, a new tendency, repeating it a few times more, a new habit gets formed. So all of our difficulties are of a psychological nature. They're all to do with old habits surfacing. And then we wonder why. There's a reciprocal law, why people dislike us, hate us. Well, we invited that because our own values were like that. If you hate, you'll be hated. There's a natural principle of sowing and reaping. To him who has conquered himself, by himself, his own self is the friend of himself. But to him who has not conquered himself, his own self stands in the place of an enemy, like the external foe. This means conquered the impulse of attention, the probe that makes a person go forward. The person who has done that finds everything favorable to himself. It's not that spirituality or advice or scripture is an impractical thing. We are suffering. How do we avoid the suffering? How do we use all our resources around us, employ them nicely, and with a sporting attitude get around them, and play a game for not just for the benefit of ourselves, but the benefit of everybody. Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga tells us we soon learn when we bless, make a blessing attitude, beam, our job being beaming, that's all inclusively, including ourselves. If we do that, then we soon learn by saying, may all beings be happy, may all beings peaceful, that the easiest, quickest way to make ourselves happy is to make other people happy. It's a law of reciprocity. So the self-controlled and serene person's supreme self is steadfast in all kinds of circumstances. Physical, like hot and cold; mental, like place and brain; general, success, failure, what we call pairs of opposites. Remains steady because he knows how to shift the attention where he wants. And the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is also important. Renouncing all activities, all actions by thought and self-control, not physically necessary, but by discrimination, what does a person do? The embodied one, which we call Dehi, the one who is apparently individual spirit, but in reality is really the Supreme Lord. He rests happily in a gate of nine gated city, resting comfortably. So the self-controlled person or principle rests happily in the 9-gated city. There's a funny song, not very philosophically accurate, that says, "O caged bird, who can know your sorrow?" The very beautiful musical style is employed, but the song is sung and perpetuates the illusion that you're a prisoner inside a body. I've even heard people say that, see, to prisoners. Well, actually, aren't we all prisoners? Well, that's one way of looking at it, and it will perpetuate your bondage. But supposing you're able to shift and say, divine grace is here, divine grace is now, and the manifestor of it is here and now also, not something to get, then how does the body work? The body is moving by a kind of remote control action, like an unmanned spacecraft. The person hosting me today, we were discussing some things, and he's saying, when I learned the lesson of being an instrument where divine grace flows through me, then everything falls into place. Supposing we have a center and we're worried about its finances or worried about its legal status or any of these things. A person who knows this key secret of tapping into the grace will say, why should I worry? When I take this anxiety away, abundant grace, which we embody as Lakshmi, we conceive it as Lakshmi, that is, the divine energy of the entire universe appearing here in my locality as abundance and wealth. Knowing this with great faith, abundance flows to me. If I want a center that is dedicated to distributing wisdom, then Saraswati is with me. If I want something that is going to protect me continuously against all odds, against all deleterious and negative attitudes, and if I want legal security, then what should I do? I should employ that Mother of the Universe, that supreme energy, that divine grace that can appear at my substation, at my locality, as a fortress, a Durga, some entity that protects me constantly, so that I can view this life not as a difficulty, but something like a manifestation of divine grace allowed to flow with a sense of attention saying, please this way, please that way. That freedom to do that with the Supreme Controller internally. So if it's not something that is captivated in me, that for convenience I can call soul, with the caveat, it's actually already free and perfect. There are no limitations to it. Then it's not something that is within a framework. Then how does the body work? I don't digest my food consciously. I say, for convenience sake, I say, I breathe. Well, I have nothing to do with the breathing. It happens. Of course, I can take it and do some breathing exercises. I can consciously control it. But 95, 96, 97% of the day, breathing is taking place. I can sleep. Breathing still takes place. Food still gets digested. Cells are still repaired and renewed. Problems are still sorted out in the unconscious mind through dream and so on. So where is the I consciousness in doing this? Something is doing it. And religion will call us God. God is digesting my food. God is pumping the heart. God is moving the diaphragm muscle, enabling breathing. And God is also delivering me some fresh ideas, creative ideas. I shouldn't block any of this, nor should I claim any responsibility for it. I have nothing to do with it. And so this city, this body is something like a city, and the Lord of the universe is sitting there. Katha Upanishad tells us, unborn, consciousness is unflickering, saying that instead of a 9-gated city, a 11-gated city, indicating there's a ruler of the city, staying comfortably inside. And when a ruler who knows how to administer the country properly just sits on the throne without saying one single word to anybody, to any of the ministers or officials or even the local councils or anything like that, out of fear for him or awareness of that presence, they obey, they do their duties properly. Without him uttering a single word, something like a remote control. And they of their own accord, out of loyalty, they carry out their duties nicely. In this same way, the Lord of Heaven is seated here in this body, and all his subordinate officers carry out their duties. And in the same way, the Lord of Heaven is seated here in the body. All his subordinate officers carry out their duties. Heart and lungs do their duty. Eyes, the ears, all do their duty. We shouldn't worry about it. Everything else happens quite automatically. Something like when we control a robot sitting in Mars and investigate that, or a Voyager that goes to the outer limits of the solar system, or a telescope, a James Webb telescope that goes out and unfolds its panels because it is programmed to do it and is controlled by a central control system that is many, many millions of miles away. In the same way, because of the presence of the divine, all the things operate through what? Through a flow of divine grace that we block. And normally speaking, anything that blocks it, that's our definition of evil. Remember, anything that stops the access of all this fundamental knowledge right here, right now, since it's all available. So I'm not conducting any of these activities by myself. Then I can re-register. This grace is flowing through divine hands, God's heads, God's eyes, God's mouths. When all the conditions necessary for realization are present, it's only attention being directed wrongly that prevents us from recognizing it. And if the attention can be put in the right direction, then immediate realization is possible right here, right now. And when the attention goes too much in one direction, let us use, say a car as an example. It runs into a ditch or something like that. Then the steering person who knows how to drive a car will take it back to the center, will readjust it. And when this becomes habitual, does it without even thinking, without any conscious effort. So the term samya, equal-mindedness, is used. Stability, even-mindedness. The ultimate principle that we call God is this. It's free from blemishes. It's a kind of equilibrium that remains stable in all circumstances. So somebody who's attuned to this and registers this and understands this will also be of the nature of equilibrium. Not upset in all his perpetual peace. Won't have a progress profile that is radically up and radically down. All even-minded. Sitting in the driver's seat, confidently directing it for a few seconds until it becomes a few minutes, until it becomes a few hours, a few days, perpetually doing that. Supposing a person faces a river and we all want to bathe in the river, facing the oncoming current, then it's risky to show your back to the current. You can try to dive because, if you try and dive, it'll topple you over. The best way will be to go hanging forward into the oncoming stream. Go forward, let it take you. So in Plymouth here, I was told, there was a man who went into a very risky area, and because he struggled, unfortunately, the poor man drowned. So we can drown, of course, or we can float. We have a natural buoyancy that says, let me let go, let me tune into the divine current, let it carry me. Why should I struggle against it? Why should I block it? So these are some thoughts, and I have to finish off early because of my other engagement. But just to finish then, we can ask in this context, what is meditation? We can call it pancake making. Out of what? Out of God's grace. We leave it there. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. See if we can pay attention to some of the things that are said here and have the capacity or employ the capacity to open and release and allow divine grace to flow. Thank you.